your crystal ball gazers for this next hour couldn't be better. The former British Prime Minister David Cameron and the former director of the CIA and former Secretary of Defense in the US, Leon Panetta. Mr. Panetta, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, my thanks for all of those who put together the Arab Strategy Forum. We have not seen as much instability in the world since probably the end of World War II. The ability to try to deal with often failed states in this region and to try to provide some degree of stability is going to be a tremendous challenge for the future. In addition, we have the threat from Iran. We have to make very clear to them that they cannot be a supporter of instability in this region. In addition to that, if you look at the rest of the world, we're dealing with a North Korea. We're dealing with a Russia that has entered what I call a new stage in the Cold War. China, we have strong economic relationships, but we're very concerned about their assertion of territorial claims, particularly in the South China Sea. And the last point I would make is cyber. We are living in a world where cyber attacks represent the potential for paralyzing a country in the future. This is the battleground of the future, cyber attacks. To that extent, I think the UAE is an example of the kind of movement in the future that we need with regards to diversifying economies, to allow for greater opportunities, and with regards to developing the kind of security needs that you will need for the future. In a democracy, and for that matter in the world, we deal with problems either through leadership or through crisis. And if we continue to govern by crisis, then that would spell, I think, trouble for the future.
David Cameron.
Well, thank you. And can I join Secretary Panetta in thanking His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, the Prime Minister of the UAE, for his patronage of this conference. We need to understand the forces that have been at play, and I think there are two. One is that globalization has benefited many people, many countries, many businesses, but some people have been left behind. But the second force at work has been more of a cultural force, which is that the pace of change in some countries, particularly the pace of change when it comes to immigration and integration of people, has just been too fast for some people to manage. If we fail to address the economically left behind in our societies, we'll see a rise of parties of the extreme left. And if we fail to address the cultural concerns and immigration concerns that people have, we'll see the rise of parties of the extreme right. At heart, we are dealing with an ideological struggle for the future of one of the world's great religions, Islam. And we need to be clear that we're going to take part in that struggle and back the moderate mainstream majority against those who perverted a great world religion. I do think that Britain and the Gulf nations are natural partners when it comes to security, natural partners when it comes to the economy and investment. The world's fifth largest economy, Britain, and the world's largest trading bloc, the European Union, should be able to come to a mutually beneficial agreement. And I think that's what we'll see in the years ahead. Frankly, I'm less optimistic, perhaps, about some of the internal tensions and problems within the European Union, particularly the way the single currency is working.
Your critics will say that you worried about the base of your party, David Cameron, and in doing so chose a path that affected Brexit, and that may be your lasting legacy. Do you regret in any way how you managed that?
I don't regret holding the referendum, because I think that the issue of Britain and the European Union was poisoning British politics, not just in my own party, but more broadly. Now, obviously, I regret the result because I was on the losing side. I made a very strong argument that I thought we were better off inside. This will not be Britain withdrawing from the world. We will have to form a partnership with Europe from the outside instead of a partnership from within the inside. We were in Europe for utility, for trade, for cooperation, for working together. We didn't like the nature of the political union. That's why we left in the end. Other countries, I don't think, do feel quite the same about Europe. They're more enthusiastic about the European Union. So as a result, I wouldn't predict its break up.
Let's talk about the states and leadership and whether we are looking at a more protectionist and inward-looking America going forward. Is Donald Trump the president, to both of you here, but starting with you, Mr. Panetta, is Donald Trump the president likely to be different from Donald Trump, the candidate, in what he was saying and what he will do?
I think the most predictable thing about Donald Trump is that he's unpredictable. A president who says we're going to make America great, we're going to do all kinds of things, is going to have to deal with the Congress. The idea that he would suddenly say, we are not going to allow Muslims to come in the United States, not only that violates those values I talked about, it violates our Constitution. We are a country that recognizes freedom of religion. And so, that's not going to happen.
In the West, we took Donald Trump's words literally, but we didn't take his candidature seriously, whereas in America, voters took his candidature seriously, but didn't take all the words literally. I think the voters may have actually been more on track.
How influential do you think Putin and Russia will be in 2017 for the benefit of this audience?
How big an influence Putin will be really is in our hands. Fundamentally, Russia is not that strong a power. He is using diplomacy and military means and who knows, other means as well, and you see that in Eastern and Central Europe, to cover up the fact that fundamentally Russia has a declining birth rate, it has a declining life expectancy, it doesn't have a strong economy, it has a strong oil economy, but hasn't actually managed to break out into other areas of expertise. So it's not it has a smaller economy than the United Kingdom. It's not fundamentally a strong country.
If your adversary knows that there are lines that you will not cross, if your adversary knows that you will not tolerate certain behavior on their part, and that's made very clear, if your adversary knows that there is no question that when you give your word about something happening, you will stand by your word, then that presents a position of strength in which then you can negotiate, you can talk, you can try to get things done together. But those lines have to be established. And I think with regards to Putin, the question for 2017 is whether those lines will be established and whether he understands.
If countries cannot produce governments that can represent all their people, in the case of the Middle East, Sunni, Shia, Christian, and Kurd, and other minorities, then you build up resentments and problems that lead to the extremism, the violence and terrorism that we see. And so America, Britain, UAE, other countries need to work together to recognize that there are times that you do have to intervene. I don't think Britain will become an anti-immigration country or a no-immigration country. What we will do outside the European Union is deliver greater control of the numbers, possibly with some form of work permit system. So we'll still be welcoming people from other European countries, but there won't be that instant access. The problem was that we couldn't deliver the necessary reduction in the net migration. In Europe's case, it has to have an external border to demonstrate that people who come are those that have a right to come.
What should have been established at the same time the agreement was made was a coalition of moderate Arab countries, of Israel, of NATO, to come together in order to govern in a democracy. Whether, as in my case, you're a Republican or a Democrat, you've got to sit down and you have to work through issues and find consensus and find compromise. But you usually start from the basis of a common set of facts in which you define what the problem is, and then obviously there are different approaches that are offered. But you have a common set of facts. In today's world, it is becoming more and more difficult to get a common set of facts.